Neal, Republican. Nancy Pelosi, Democrat. Sam Grove, Libertarian. And Ted Zur from the Peace and Freedom Party. The 5th District consists of parts of the city and county of San Francisco. The following candidates responded to our offer.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. I would like to thank KQED for giving me this opportunity to talk to you and to thank you for the privilege of representing San Francisco in the Congress of the United States. As a Congresswoman, I must serve as a legislator as well as a representative. As a legislator, I have worked to support and pass legislation which will benefit the people of San Francisco. This legislation includes housing, health care, peace in Central America, environmental protection, education, and economic opportunity. The most urgent health issue facing our community is AIDS. Last March, I introduced a bill which would assist in financing AIDS patient care. Included in the bill were early intervention projects for people infected with the AIDS virus and mental health projects for people affected by AIDS and ARC. I'm proud to report to you that both these measures passed both houses of Congress. I've also worked to bring jobs to San Francisco. This year, we were able to get authorization for a new federal building in the city. And on Wednesday, the European communities will be opening their first consular office in San Francisco, which will increase San Francisco's importance as a center of trade and commerce. I've been a strong advocate for child care, parental leave, increasing the minimum wage, and other legislation that recognizes the reality of women in the workplace. Regarding the environment, I believe that the preservation of our bay, our coastline, and our air quality is essential. I've co-sponsored over 50 environmental bills this Congress. To protect the bay, I have ordered a government study to determine safe dredging practices in the Bay Area and have obtained $1.4 million for improvements at the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Clean air requires a commitment to mass transit. While the Reagan administration tried to cut federal funding for San Francisco's Muni by 100%, I fought to restore it and obtained money to run and maintain the system. The lack of affordable housing in San Francisco is a critical problem. As a member of the Housing Subcommittee, I fought for an extension of the Mortgage Revenue Bond Program to preserve low-income housing in San Francisco, and I supported major housing subsidy and community development programs. San Francisco has always spoken out for peace. As your representative, I have opposed the Reagan-Bush policy of militarism in Central America. It is doomed to failure. We must instead support dialogue and economic development in the region. Also, we must insist on respect for human rights and protect people who flee from persecution. I've taken the lead in Congress to protect Salvadoran refugees who have returned to El Salvador and have co-sponsored legislation which would have allowed Salvadorans to stay in this country until it is safe for them to return home. For 8 years, the needs and interests of San Franciscans have been held hostage by the Reagan administration and its policies. This administration has cut billions of dollars from education programs. In the past 8 years, it has reduced government housing programs by 80%. It has done little to fight AIDS. It has not even listened to the advice of its own AIDS Commission. And it has tried repeatedly to cut back on our commitment to civil rights by nominating Judge Bork to the Supreme Court and by vetoing the most important civil rights bill of our decade. We have seen more and more homeless families living on our streets, but the Reagan-Bush administration refused to use all the money authorized for homeless programs. The Reagan-Bush administration says we should not bargain with terrorists, while they secretly sell arms for hostages. They talk about balancing the budget while they introduce the largest budget deficits in the history of our country. This is not leadership. The fact is, the Reagan-Bush administration is letting the American dream slip away for most Americans. After 8 years of poor leadership, we have much to do. We must free this country from debt, regain excellence in our schools, provide affordable housing and jobs, promote quality health care, and become peacemakers rather than weapons suppliers. For this, we need real leadership. It is urgent that we all work for the election of Leo McCarthy to the United States Senate and for Michael Dukakis as President of the United States. Never has an election been more important. Thank you for the privilege to represent you and San Francisco in Congress. I'm grateful for the honor and hope to make you proud of my service there. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bruce O'Neill, and I want to be your next representative in the U.S. House of Representatives. I want to thank Channel 9 and Channel 32 for allowing me the opportunity to present my position on the issues, because my opponent, Nancy Pelosi, has refused to participate in the democratic process of debating the issues. Instead, she prefers to use her $1 million staff and send mail that promotes herself and avoids the issues. These mailers are paid for by the taxpayers, and that means you and me. I believe the voters should know their representatives in Congress and know how they are likely to vote. Therefore, I'm going to address several major issues facing our nation that my opponent and I disagree on. First, my opponent wants to raise taxes. I don't want to raise taxes because lower taxes stimulate the economy and create jobs. Second, my opponent wants to increase the size of the federal government. I believe we can continue to create more jobs in the private sector by keeping taxes low and reducing the size of government. Third, my opponent refuses to accept any responsibility for the budget deficit. The House of Representatives has the power to tax and spend, but Nancy wants to tax and spend and then blame the administration for the budget deficit. My background is in business and banking. I've spent the last 15 years working for 2 major banks. During the last 5 years, I've been working on major problem loans from corporations in various industries around the nation. I know what large deficits can do to a corporation and an industry, and I know what large deficits can do to a country as well. I spent my first 5 years banking in the Latin American groups of 2 major banks. This is the most serious long-term problem facing our nation. If not addressed, it will undermine our economic well-being and ultimately our national defense. I want to work on the problem, my opponent doesn't. That is why I'm asking you to send me, Bruce O'Neill, to Congress on November 8th. Fourth, I believe we must maintain a strong defense in order to ensure the peace. The deployment of the Pershing missiles in Europe resulted in the Russians withdrawing their SS-20s from Europe as part of the INF Treaty. Although many anti-military members of Congress denounced the deployment of the Pershing missiles, they now praise Ronald Reagan for his actions and the INF Treaty. My opponent's voting record is so weak on defense that I can only speculate that if she had her way, we would not have the INF Treaty. She is opposed to the home porting of the USS Missouri in San Francisco because it has nuclear capabilities. Her anti-nuclear bias is so strong that she is willing to send between 5,000 and 8,000 jobs to Southern California, the state of Washington, or elsewhere. This is an irresponsible position. It is irresponsible to ask our sailors to fight a nuclear-powered and equipped Soviet Navy with a non-nuclear conventional Navy. It is irresponsible to all citizens who expect protection from the U.S. Navy. But ultimately, it is irresponsible to the citizens of San Francisco because we know the Navy is not going to eliminate its nuclear capabilities. Nonetheless, she is willing to send these jobs and additional revenues and additional city taxes to Washington or elsewhere. I support the home porting of the USS Missouri in San Francisco. It's good for the country and it's good for the citizens of San Francisco. I therefore encourage everyone to vote yes on S and no on R. Fifth, my opponent is soft on crime. She voted against the new anti-drug bill, and she voted for the furlough and early release program in the District of Columbia. The average number of prior convictions of those prisoners released was 6, and 92% of those released had at least 2 prior convictions. 14% of those released were rearrested and charged with new crimes within 1 month of their release. I would have voted for the anti-drug bill and against the furlough program. I believe criminals should serve out their full sentences. Sixth, my opponent supports a bill that would institutionalize 3- and 4-year-olds in a federal system of child care. I prefer a system that permits parents to choose among diverse child care options. This can be accomplished through a combination of vouchers and tax deductions. Seventh, I also support any program that promotes peace and prosperity, such as bringing the Olympics to the Bay Area in 1992. Finally, we must ask ourselves whether or not we want to continue with the peace and prosperity programs I've just stated, or do we want to return to the days of high taxes, high inflation, high unemployment, and a weak defense, and a loss of national purpose? The choice is clear. I hope you choose to vote for me, Bruce O'Neill, on November 8th.
Hi, my name is Ted Zur. I'm the Peace and Freedom Party candidate for Congress here in the 5th District in San Francisco. That's the truth. I wouldn't lie to you, but my opponent would. Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic incumbent, was elected last year in a special election. She promised you that she would never vote for aid to the Contras. She even promised that her party, the Democratic Party, would put an end to aid to the Contras for good. She lied. She voted for Contra aid, and her party, the Democratic Party in Congress, voted for aid to the Contras. And now she and her party, the Democrats, are campaigning for Mr. Contrade himself, Lloyd Bentsen, to become the next Vice President of the United States. If that's the kind of representation you want on this issue and every other issue, vote for Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party. Peace and Freedom Party, my party, is the alternative, the socialist alternative. If you want to vote for representatives who will tell the truth and to stand on the same side of the issues as you do, vote Peace and Freedom Party. This is what we stand for. We stand for an end to all aid to the Contras, an end to all aid to Duarte in El Salvador, to Pinochet in Chile, and to every other right-wing dictatorship that was put in power and is supported by United States imperialism. We want to close down all U.S. military bases in Panama, South Korea, the Philippines, and every other country and bring those troops home. I'd like to see San Francisco turned into part of one great big nuclear-free zone. How would we do it? Unilateral disarmament. And it's a fact, it's the only way we will end the threat of nuclear war. Dukakis or Bush sitting down with Gorbachev at a table is not going to do it, and you know it just as well as I do. San Francisco is a multicultural and multiracial city, but 30% of the adults in the 5th district, this district, don't have the right to vote. That's right, 30%. Working class people like you and I. Why can't they vote? Because of the racist citizenship and immigration laws passed with the support of Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats. It's a mockery of democracy. Peace and Freedom Party stands for the repeal of all of those racist laws, from English only to the Simpson-Rodino Immigration Act. We stand for the extension of full citizenship rights, including the right to vote, to every immigrant worker in this country and in this city. What would that mean? That 30% of the people, almost half the workers in the city, would have the right to vote. And you could bet we would vote Pelosi and the rest of them out. My opponent, Nancy Pelosi, doesn't think she has to talk about rent control, because she knows she's going to be in Washington, D.C., and the real estate developers who pay the tab for her are going to be back here in San Francisco ripping you and me off. I stand for complete nationwide rent control and a rollback of rents to 10% of household income. Peace and Freedom Party stands for the outlaw of all evictions and foreclosures. Of course, we don't take a penny in campaign contributions from the real estate developers because our program would put them out of business. We'd like to see that happen. Wouldn't you? San Francisco used to be a union town. Not anymore. And you could thank the Democrats who've run this city for the last 50 years, and the labor leaders like Walter Johnson who told you to vote for them, for that. Thank them for two-tier. Thank them for the takeaway of your benefits. Thank them for the layoffs of city employees. Ask any union member in town. I want to see a revival of the militant traditions of the San Francisco General Strike that made this city a union town. I want to outlaw the use of scabs. I want to outlaw the use of court injunctions. How can we start? One way to start is in the voting booth on November 8th. I'd like to ask you to vote for a legendary trade unionist, Herb Lewin, for president. He should have been on the ballot November 8th, but the Democrats illegally took him off. I urge you to write in Herb Lewin, the Peace and Freedom Party candidate for president, and Emma Marr for vice president on November 8th. Vote for the working class alternative, Peace and Freedom Party. And if you'd like more information, please call us at area code 415-695-0340 or write to Peace and Freedom Party, 3309 and a half Mission Street, San Francisco, California, 94110.
There are two candidates running for Congress in the 7th District. George Miller, the